This is Greg Fowler for Online London, and I'm Tom Foster, who's a candidate in Ward 12. Welcome.
Thank you.
If elected, how many hours per week on average do you expect that you'd spend working in your elected capacity?
I think most councillors will spend between 35 and 45 hours a week without any problem at all.
Do you think ward councillors are currently paid enough for the amount of work that they'll be doing in the next term of city council?
Well, I'm not running based on salary. I'm running on based on the needs of the ward. And the salary is, I believe, currently $36,000. And with me, that's perfectly fine. I don't have a problem with that.
London's governance model is undergoing significant change, which includes elimination of Board of Control. Do you think that this will increase the necessity for ward councillors to inform themselves about issues outside of their own ward boundaries?
Ward councillors should be aware of everything that's on the agenda, not just the items that they bring forward. They should approach each meeting without a personal agenda, but rather with their thoughts open to what their constituents want, as well as what the city needs.
Do you live within the geographical boundaries of the electoral area in which you're contesting the election?
I've lived within Ward 12 almost 20 years.
How many of your post-teenage years have you lived in London?
Post-teenage years, about 20.
Have you attended any standing committee meetings over the last 4 years?
I've attended several meetings. I've also been a former chair and vice chair of 2 of the standing committees.
Any Board of Control meetings?
I've not attended Board of Control, but I've been online with their agendas and so on.
Are you familiar with the Municipal Act and the Municipal Councillor's Guide?
Yes, I am.
The Strengthening Neighborhoods Task Force recommended development of a neighborhood matching fund type of program for large and small community projects other than for celebrations or events. Do you support that recommendation?
I'd have to research that further because I don't know the recommendation.
Do you support development of a community program to fund the creation of public art in public places?
Again, I'd need to look at that. There are several locations right now that do have public art on display.
Should the City of London and its boards and commissions embrace the concept of making their data open and accessible to everybody as often as is possible and adopting open standards for that data?
Part of my campaign is to be transparent, to be accountable. So yes, everything that comes forward to a committee, everything that comes forward to council needs to be open and it needs to be available to the public. Sitting watching on the TV and listening to 1 through 8 and having that approved doesn't tell me anything. But if they're read off by title and the people have the information at home that can be obtained through the website, then they're going to have a better idea of what the city is doing for them and what's going on at the council meetings.
When existing software applications have to be replaced, or when software licenses have to be renewed, should the city adopt the use of open source software whenever that's possible?
I'm not sure just exactly what the question is, so I'd like to pass on that one.
Is the city's communication department being given enough resources, money and personnel to properly maintain the city website and to inform citizens in a timely fashion?
I've noticed several changes to the website and I've noticed several upgrades. Does that mean that they have enough resources? That again I'm not sure of and would have to look at the budgetary commitments to them, and I would have to research further what their needs are.
Should citizens be able to subscribe to subject-specific RSS feeds from City Hall in order to stay informed?
Please explain to me what an RSS feed is.
Should citizens be able to download the agendas of upcoming public meetings, including advisory committee meetings, at least a week in advance?
They should be able to download all the information they need at any time.
Despite the requirement of the Municipal Act that all City Hall meetings be public except for specific reasons, it's been argued that they most often are not because of the inability of the public to hear what's being said. Do you support the adoption of a policy which mandates the use of microphones in all public meetings at City Hall?
Within the boundaries of what is public access, as far as human resources issues, legal issues, I think those should still remain in camera.
Do you think that the City of London ought to be webcasting all of its public meetings?
I wouldn't have a problem with that. If it's not beyond the scope of our budgetary commitments, I wouldn't wouldn't have a problem with it at all.
Do you think that all of the city's boards and commissions ought to be webcasting all of their public meetings?
Again, that would be a budgetary situation. If it's not going to put a strain on the communications budget, then yes.
Do you think that the chairpersons of all public meetings at City Hall ought to have to announce motions and amendments to motions and the number of votes for and against those motions so that the public can understand what's taking place?
A chair is there to conduct the meeting. If there's a motion placed before the chair, then it should be read aloud. If there's a motion that's amended, then that amendment should be read aloud. And again, you can take a group vote, or you can take a recorded vote, depending on what's requested from the individuals. In a general majority pass situation, the hands go up, and if it's 51% in favor, then that item passes. But the public that are at that meeting, or the public that are attending through, if we go to webcast, or the public that are attending through television, should be fully aware of what these items are, yes.
Should London hire an Auditor General?
I'm not sure that an Auditor General would be necessary. We have some pretty good people that are accounting, and we do hire a consultant at different times to check the financial background of the city.
Should homeowners have to pay a percentage of the cost for the repair of damage to underground infrastructure on their own property that has been caused by city-owned trees?
There again, there's an appeal process that the homeowner can go to the city, and they can argue their point. Sometimes they win, sometimes they don't. Do I feel that the city is fairly treating the homeowner currently? I would have to look more into that, but I do know the appeal process is there for the homeowner. If the city is responsible for the damage, quite often the homeowner will receive some form of compensation for that.
Do you agree with the placemaking concept of neighborhood gateways?
Again, I'm not sure about that question. I'll pass it.
Should there be increased user representation on the London Transit Commission?
I think on the London Transit Commission, we need people who are more committed to that commission. Whether it's through user interface or whether it's through counselors who actually participate on the buses to find out what's wrong with the system and how to help fix it.
If the City of London is going to provide venture capital to businesses, should the city be guaranteed a return on its investment in the event that those businesses become profitable?
Yes.
Should people be allowed to naturalize their lawns?
By that, do you mean should they be allowed to have 4-foot ragweed growing? That's considered a noxious weed, and with the amount of allergens that we already have in the air, I would have to question the sensibility of doing that. But by the same token, do I think that the city is far too controlling in some of its legislation right now? Yes, I do.
Are London's pedestrians and pedestrian issues sufficiently represented at City Hall?
I'm not 100% sure whether they are or not.
The traffic and parking bylaw prohibits people from using any sidewalk for any purpose other than pedestrian traffic, except as specifically permitted. Should downtown patios, which consume most of the width of the public sidewalk, be permitted?
I think we need to revisit that. I think we need to take a look at what incursions are made into the traffic lanes. If they're forcing people onto the street, then no, they shouldn't be allowed to do that. Should pedestrians have a good pathway throughout the city? Yes, they should.
When closure of a public sidewalk for construction purposes takes place, what steps should be required to ensure that pedestrians are not forced out onto the roadway in a manner which puts them at risk?
We should make sure that we have a walkway to the opposite side or a covered walkway across the sidewalk somewhere so that they're not put into the lanes of traffic. There must be scaffolding, there must be barricades, there must be a roof over it so it doesn't find debris falling into it.
Is the warranted sidewalk program sufficiently funded?
That I'm not sure of.
Is the warranted walkway program sufficiently funded?
Again, I'm not sure of that.
Old unlit streets are not lit unless there's a local improvement program application and cost sharing amongst owners. Do you agree with that policy?
I wasn't aware that we had streets in London that do not have lighting. I thought all streets had lighting. The local improvements situation has to be voted on by a neighborhood. They have the right to turn down any particular recommendations with a petition of 51%. That would be up to the individual homeowners to make that decision.
Do you think special funding ought to be provided to London Police for the purchase of additional speed watch radar trailers and the cost of having auxiliary police deploy them on a frequent basis?
When we're doing surveys to determine the speed in a neighborhood, a residential neighborhood such as we did on Jalna, Ernest, and Sheddington, I think those PEEP radars are very, very effective. I don't know if we need more. I'm not sure how many we have. There are several residential areas that are asking for this type of measure to help them with their traffic calming. Are the traffic calming measures put in place afterwards as effective as those speed signs? I don't believe they are.
Should the city be spending as much as it is per year from the federal gas tax to construct on-road bike lanes?
On-road bicycle lanes are an up-and-coming thing. More and more people are becoming more environmentally aware. They want to ride their bicycles. They need a safe place to do it. Yes, we should be spending money for that. We should also be upgrading our roads at a faster pace. We're currently several years behind in bringing our road infrastructure up to speed.
Should bicycles be allowed on public sidewalks?
No.
Should persons in motorized wheelchairs and other mobility devices that are on the public sidewalk be obliged to yield for pedestrians?
The people in motorized scooters and wheelchairs, which are a handicapped vehicle, have the same rights as the pedestrian and should be treated that way. Do they have the right to bump into people or demand that people move? I don't believe so. I think everybody needs to share alike when it comes to the sidewalk, with the exception of those who are using a vehicle, such as a bicycle, an e-bike, a motorized scooter. Any of those items belong on bicycle paths or on the roadway itself.
Should the City of London install more bike racks?
Depending on where they're located, there should be city-supported bicycle racks in parks, around schools, close by public buildings like the libraries and so on. And after that, I believe it's up to the individual businesses.
Do you think that theft of bikes is an important issue?
Theft of anything is an important issue.
Do you have any suggestions about what might be done to combat the problem?
Most bicycles today have a removable seat or a removable wheel. They have locks specifically to get them set around a post somewhere, or to lock up mechanisms that operate the bike and that will be damaged or render the bicycle useless if people try to take them away without cutting them. You see somebody walking down the street with a set of bolt cutters, he usually has bad things in mind.
Is the City of London currently spending enough money to promote its web-based ride match service?
I'm not sure about that one.
Should there be dedicated and discounted carpool parking spaces on downtown streets and in city-owned lots?
Carpooling for the individuals might be better off in some of the outlying areas where there is a little more property and we can do that better. For example, we might, just off the top of my head, take an area in White Oaks where the mall may dedicate 20 or 30 spaces for carpooling for people who are coming downtown from that neighborhood.
Should every signalized London intersection provide advanced left turns?
Not necessarily. But we should be able to better optimize the new systems that we have in place that were supposed to provide a proper synchronization of traffic lights to improve the traffic flow. This isn't occurring because we've removed the person from that position where he was dedicated to optimizing the system.
Does the City of London currently provide sufficient funding for the Community Gardens program?
I'm not sure. I would have to speak to our arborists and gardeners.
Should all dogs have to be muzzled when they're not on their owner's property?
I don't believe so. Not all dogs are considered bite problems. Not all dogs do bite. And most dog owners that I've seen lately have better control of their animals than they used to have some time ago.
Should dogs be allowed at community events?
Depending on the event. If it's an indoor event in Centennial Hall, not necessarily. If it's an outdoor event at Harris Park, they're walking through the park anyway.
Do you think that people ought to be able to raise chickens in their backyards?
I'm not exactly sure what to tell you on that one.
Well, that concludes the question and answer interview, and thank you for your cooperation.
Thank you, Greg.